Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial.
And I'm Elena Noland. I'm the collections manager at the Battleship New Jersey.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about the work that has to go in when we open new spaces on the ship, and primarily restoration and safety type stuff. So today we are in turret number 1 in the turret officer's booth portion of the gun house. And this is a space which we recently opened and put on the self-guided tour route. And by doing that, by doing restoration work in here and opening this space, it allows us to close down turret number 3, which had been the gun turret visitors could go into, so we can do restoration work in there too.
It also allows us to work on the teak deck back there, which you will see in another video.
So, some of the things that we have to do when we open up a space like this are real obvious. We come into any space on the ship and there's faded or flaking paint, so we try to restore that. Most of the time, our volunteer deck force will come in and do that work over the course of a week or so, depending on the size of the space. Other things that need to be done, you might see sailor art around the ship, which is artwork that has been left by the crew of the ship, usually 1980s crew members, that just like the rest of the paint in this space. And this turret is a particularly bad example because there's no insulation here. It's just an armored steel box, so whatever temperature it is on the outside, you get vast fluctuations inside, which causes paint to pop off of the steel real bad. And that happens to our artwork too. We want to preserve that. Luckily, we have an artist who volunteers on board named Dave Boone, who is able to touch up a lot of this stuff as good as new.
And we do document all of the sailor art as well, so that we have accurate depictions of colors and things like that, because Dave is amazing. We're very glad that he comes and does that, but he might not be around forever, or he might move, so we need all the photo documentation to make sure things do remain accurate.
We're aware of over 40 pieces of sailor art around the ship. Probably about a third of that is on the tour route, and the rest of it is in parts of the ship that haven't been opened yet. So here's one of our favorite pieces of sailor art on board. This was probably done in the late 80s. It has been touched up by our volunteer Dave Boone. This one is available on a t-shirt that we sell in our gift shop. And even though the ship is closed right now, you can still find that online. And so here's another piece of sailor art. This one has not been restored. It was likely painted by the same sailor, because the themes are pretty darn similar, in the late 80s. But as a museum, we haven't gotten a chance to touch this one up yet. And you can see where stuff has peeled away, and you might even be able to see the condensate that has built up on this from just the temperature fluctuations between the uninsulated interior of the turret and the temperature changes between night and day on the outside. So that's causing condensate, which is going to affect our coatings and our steel beneath, and it's also causing the paint to pop off. So you can also see in the overhead, one of the steps towards opening up this space was to come in and chip off all the peeling paint. So you can see how ugly this stuff looks, and you can see what this space was painted in previous layers. The dark color you're seeing is the bare metal. You might see some yellow in there, that's a primer. There's some gray, which seems to be the color that this space was painted previously, and at least in the late 80s, the space was painted white, which is what your top coating is, although it's kind of faded. So, as part of opening this space, we would send volunteers in here to paint it. Unfortunately, that project is on hold for the time being. We're not allowing volunteers on board the ship during the corona pandemic. So another thing we have to do when we open up these spaces is add safety features. The whole point of opening up this space in Turret 1 is so that you can see inside the gun pit where members of the gun crew actually loaded a 16-inch barrel, and also to see the pointer and trainer's positions behind me. Now, it's called a gun pit because it is literally a pit. It has to be open so that the gun can elevate to its full 45 degrees. safety features in 1943 are not exactly what OSHA would regulate today. So in order to keep visitors safe when they come in here, we have netted this off. You'll also see places around the ship where we've painted yellow stripes to warn people, hey, there's a step here that you wouldn't normally expect. And we've done a number of other safety features. In the turrets in particular, there's low headroom, so you might even see caution tape or padding on things that project down from the overhead. So right now we're in one of our forward berthing spaces, which was recently restored and opened. In order to do that, we had to do a number of things. So first off, we have agreements with both the Navy and the US EPA on how to make sure the environment is safe before we start letting visitors through. So we have to test for things like asbestos, lead, and PCBs. Once we have certified that there is none of that in the air, which I will say, as many times as we've tested for the 200 or more compartments on the ship that are opened, we have never found any in the air, although we do know that the Navy did use items like that when the ship was in operation. So once we have tested and proven that the environment is safe inside the space, then we go through, we chip paint, we paint it. You're seeing a space that's been relatively recently painted. We renew stencils for it. We find racks that used to have equipment in them, like this fire station, and we find replacement equipment. Then we have to put a display sign there telling you that, hey, this fire main is no longer in use. This is just for display only. We do have to add fire extinguishers every certain number of feet or compartments so that if there is an emergency in here, there is an immediate response. And we also have to add ropes and other barriers to keep people in the part of the ship that's restored, as opposed to if you go over that way, it isn't. Another thing we have to add is emergency lighting. So exit lights like this that are always on, and then spotlights that'll come on if we lose power to this compartment, so people can still see their manner of egress.
And now we've moved to turret 3, which we mentioned when we were in turret 1 that this space has not been restored to the extent that turret 1 has. So there is shipping paint. There's a very lovely spider in a web. You can see here behind me, another thing that we mentioned in turret 1 is that we would add paint to tripping hazards. We also have hazards to your head. So this is an optical rangefinder. Turret 1 has had its removed because the ship shipped too much water and it just didn't work the way that it was predicted to. So they removed it, so there was a whole lot more room, which is another reason that it was good to open more space in turret 1. So we do have yellow caution tape painted onto the bottom side of this rangefinder. We also have other things for you to bang your head on. So these are periscopes. They do still actuate. Usually we turn them around so they're looking at Olympia across the river, which is only fair because Bakuna, the submarine, is looking at us. So turnabout is fair play. We do have a little bit of interpretation in here. We do have an audio guide sign back here. Because this was the turret that guests were going in, they didn't really go into turret 1 before we started doing maintenance back here. So we do have that.
So that's something we still have to add to the spaces that we've seen already. We have no interpretation signs, audio guide stops, those sorts of things. Turret 1 does have a video that plays in there that shows what the loading process was. But otherwise, that's another step we need to do towards opening that space.
And one of the goals that we have when we open spaces is we kind of want it to look like people have just up and left, people being the crew. So we do have a status board that was still left in here, just a hand-drawn one pretty much, that does still have writing on it. So those are kinds of things that we try not to change. We do try to leave them as is and protect them to the best of our ability. Also adding things to the space to make it a little bit more informative, like this enormous bore brush, which is actually made of wood brass, so it is from our ship. We did find it down in one of the pits in turret 2, along with several more.
So we have extras, which is why this one can come out, but it appears to be brand new. So this would have been used to actually clean the gun barrels in between trainings and or conflicts.
It has a handle on each end that you could hook a block and tackle to.
Oh, you're coming off. Right, yeah.
So the barrel would be depressed. You'd have a block and tackle attached to one end going through the barrel, another block and tackle at the other end. So you could pull it through and then pull it back out the other way.
And you can see that it has grooves on it so that it does follow the rifling, so it'll turn and really get in there. But yeah, so our goal is to try to get the spaces to as close as they would have looked while also keeping people safe. And also bring some more educational stuff in. So that's kind of my part of opening spaces, is I do try to find objects that would have been in spaces that won't be hurt, or find some way that we can put them out so they're protected from visitors as well, but still add something to the experience.
So remember to like, share, and subscribe. Check the comment section down below for links to how to donate to the ship and for our ship store if you're interested in one of those t-shirts
Or
we
lighters.
sell.
Or the lighters.
Or the lighters or any of the other stuff there. And remember to check back every single day during our closure for more content across our various digital media platforms.